Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
Well, you haven't. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing. He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15 times.
Nation, Waldorf Nation. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's Wednesday. Welcome. It's gonna be a fun show. All right, so look, let's be honest. I'm coming at you with a little bit of cynicism here. Okay, so now, yes, I'm cynical. You're gonna see why. So I'm going to present some good reason. You can tell me if I'm wrong or not. But that first story is, of course, Letitia James suing Donald Trump. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about one of the sadder, more hilarious stories involving Trump. Then we're going to switch over. We're going to talk about Ron DeSantis and the migrants and Marco Rubio lying consistently about it. We also are going to talk about Amazon and one of the new executives. You're going to love that. And finally, Don Jr. and furries. Fun times. So, yeah. I'm here. I prefer dark. Cynical. Green. No, green does not equal cynical. But you're gonna see, and again, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but we'll do that story first. But before I do, please like and share the stream. Again, helps us out very, very much. Need all the shares and stuff that you can give me. So that said, why don't we dive in story. Now we'll show you my cynicism. All right. Adding to the already huge mountain of legal issues, New York Attorney General Letitia James had filed a civil fraud lawsuit against former President Donald Trump, his real estate business, and his adult children on Wednesday. In fact, in a press conference, James announced a suit. I want to give you, just a small clip of that today. Take a look.
Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization repeatedly and persistently manipulated the value of assets to induce banks to lend money to the Trump Organization on more favorable terms than would otherwise have been available to the company. to pay lower taxes, to satisfy continuing loan agreements, and to induce insurance companies to provide insurance coverage for higher limits and at lower premiums.
All right, so look, basically the entire suit is based on Donald Trump's shady business practices in the state of New York. So I need to remind you, this is not a criminal lawsuit. That said, could there possibly be anything criminal that they find in discovery? This goes through. Well, there is certainly a chance of that. But at this point, this is a civil lawsuit that carries a potential $250 million in penalties and possibly could bar him from doing business in New York. So that's likely the worst of it, at least as far as I can understand this. So now, among other allegations, the suit claims that the former president's Florida estate and golf resort, Mar-a-Lago, was valued as high as $739 million, or about 10 times more than what it was actually worth. It should have been valued about 1/10 of that amount, according to the investigation that has been ongoing for several years, undertaken by the DA. So now the suit also says that the higher valuation was based on the false premise that it was unrestricted property and could be developed for residential use, even though Mr. Trump himself had signed deeds donating his residential development rights and sharply restricting changes to the property. CNN also reported a list of defendants here, or at least a partial list, which includes, of course, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Ivanka Trump, as well as Alan Weisselberg, Jeffrey McConney, the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust, the Trump Organization Incorporated, and other businesses associated with Trump. So, like I said, civil lawsuit. I don't think it's something that should be okay. So what I'm trying to say is lower your expectations. Now, look, more details on this. First, earlier this month, James rejected a settlement offer from Trump's lawyers, setting the stage for this lawsuit to happen. The New York Times notes that if the case does go to trial and Mr. Trump loses, which seems to be like a pretty good chance, the judge could impose these financial penalties of up to $250 million and restrict the former president's business operations in New York. Now, this was hyped up by, James, and I can understand why. But to me, it feels underwhelming. At least personally, I am underwhelmed by this. Okay. I think that there's a lot of people, online, especially, Resistance Twitter, etc., where they're making a huge deal about it. But I think that this is, and I think in the grand scheme of things, going to be rather small potatoes. I don't, of course, have any doubt that he did this. Of course he did. Look, Donald Trump is a gigantic con man and a complete and total grifter. Of course, they're going to find evidence or have evidence that he did so. And yeah, if he's found guilty, as in they have the evidence and convinces a jury, that would be great. Wonderful. But then what does that mean? I mean, Donald Trump just probably, declare himself bankrupt again. As if he hasn't already done that. So again, I'm not super excited about this particular lawsuit. Okay, he's not going to go to jail. This is not a criminal lawsuit. So that's it. I mean, now there are other investigations, and some of them are criminal. For example, there's a federal investigation into his handling classified documents that produced an FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago. That's really important. The Justice Department investigation into the January 6th riot at the Capitol, and the investigation by a Georgia prosecutor into efforts to try to overturn the 2020 election. I think that's really what I care about the most. Are these, criminal investigations going to put this guy in? Because look, at this point, he belongs in prison. Honestly. I don't really care as much about, he can't do his business in New York. No, the guy should be in prison. He's a literal criminal and tried to overturn our country. Tried to install himself as a dictator. No, again, underwhelmed. I'm super underwhelmed. Unless, of course, this may lead to any sort of criminal, evidence that's turned in, again, through discovery, that could, help the criminal cases against him. I'm not really interested. I'm just not. That said, I want to give you Trump's response, who said, actually, you know what? Before I get to Trump's response, let's talk about, again, one of the possible criminal investigations that, could have happened, but it generally didn't, right? You had the former Manhattan District Attorney, Cyrus Vance Jr., that was working on a criminal case against Donald Trump. Now, he left that job. His replacement, Alvin Bragg, is notoriously weak. He decided to basically put this case in the back burner, despite one of the former prosecutors. By the way, there are two prosecutors that were working on that case. They resigned because Alvin Bragg decided not to really pursue it. Okay? And so that's despite one of these prosecutors in the New York Times, in his resignation letter that was published in the New York Times, he said, look, we had him dead to rights. Yes, the office had enough evidence to charge Mr. Trump with numerous felonies. And yet, all we can do is, the best that you can do is get a civil fraud case in New York City. Again, I'm not going against, I'm not ragging on Letitia James. She does a great job, and she's, excellent. But if this is all that we can do, if it's all that they can do, it just doesn't seem to be enough, in my opinion. You can disagree, of course, but I just feel, I feel like this is going to be a rather small thing, and it's just incredibly overhyped. This guy's, again, a classic criminal. We know that, but he's even more dangerous than defrauding some investors. That said, let's get to Trump's response here. Here's what he said on Truth Social, or, well, his favorite.
Truth Central.
Another witch hunt by a racist Attorney General, Letitia James, who failed in her run for governor, getting almost zero support from the public, and is now doing poorly against Law and Order AG candidate, highly respected Michael Henry. I never thought that this case would be brought until I saw her really bad poll numbers. She's a fraud who campaigned on a Get Trump platform, despite the fact that the city is one of the crime and murder disasters of the world under her watch. In another post, he says, Attorney General Letitia Peekaboo James. I don't understand that nickname. I really, really don't. But honestly, ridiculous nicknames. But says, a total crime-fighting disaster in New York, spending all of her time fighting for the very powerful and well-represented banks and insurance companies who were fully paid, made a lot of money, and never had a complaint again about me, instead of fighting murder and violent crime. No, let me just stop there. That's the new conservative talking point, by the way. Everything's about how, horrible, crime. Be scared, be afraid, be distracted. That's all they have. It says, which is killing New York State. She is a failed AG whose lack of talent in the fight against crime is causing record numbers of people and companies to flee New York. Bye-bye. Hey, well, you might not be able to do business in New York anymore, Trump. So, I don't know. But look, anyway, understand that my cynicism, I'm really struggling with it here, okay? I want to be hopeful that some of the other investigations will be able to prove the criminality and then be able to deal actually appropriate consequences for those alleged crimes. And of course, he'd have to be convicted of them. There'd have to be evidence, etc. And he's, of course, got the right to go through the appropriate legal process. But again, at the moment, I'm just really not getting my hopes up for anything to happen on this, because honestly, I think that he could delay, appeal, etc. for years and years and years, even if he's found guilty. And of course, be able to declare himself bankrupt and avoid the most serious, penalties for what he's alleged to have done. So again, I'm just not feeling it today. Please tell me why I'm wrong. Okay. Peekaboo is an old archaic racial slur. Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting. Wouldn't be a surprise. Worst Trump impression ever? Oh, that's kind of the whole point. Every billionaire is a criminal, says Ronnie Franco. Well, every billionaire is definitely a policy failure, and you don't become a billionaire without stepping on some people. So I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. But remember, I really doubt that Donald Trump is a billionaire at all. But that's just me. Okay. In what is probably one of the most hilarious and depressing things I've seen lately, is a recent report by the New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman, who, according to several sources, claims that Trump had aides that would follow him around and recite nice things that people are saying about him on Twitter and on other places. Here's a tweet from Haberman. As Trump has been out of office over the last 20 months, a rotating cast of aides has been tasked with following him around the golf course and at the club he's at, and giving him positive reinforcement from Twitter and wherever else they find it on the web, per people told of the practice. That's sad. That is incredibly sad. Imagine being so incredibly insecure that you would need the constant validation from random people on social media, and then paying aides to do that, to come and tell you that. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing. Now, Tara Palmieri of Puck News had written this about her, about this entire phenomenon during a time of Politico. Let me share that. President Donald Trump's former campaign staffers claimed that they cracked the code for tamping down on his most inflammatory tweets. And they say that current West Wing staff would do well to take note. The key to keeping Trump's Twitter habit under control, according to 6 former campaign officials, is to ensure that his personal media consumption includes a steady stream of praise. And when no such praise was to be found, staff would turn to friendly outlets to drum some up and make sure that it would make its way to Trump's desk. Once again, sad, pathetic, baby. But honestly, what's more sad is, and there's a real point here to be made, someone's actually willing to do that job. Can you believe it? You couldn't pay me. You couldn't pay me any amount of money to follow Donald Trump or any other politician around, by the way, to kiss their ass. Be like, oh, sir, did you see that they put a positive tweet? Bob 72647 on Twitter said, oh, Donald Trump, tremendous golfer, the best golfer ever. Oh, thanks, Bob. No, that would be the worst job in the world. Let me tell you what, politicians should be kissing the asses of the voters. Okay? You know why? Because politicians need us more than we need them. Okay? In fact, we don't need politicians at all. But this gets to the whole point of Trump and how he's actually pretty good at unmanning people. Look, the other day I talked about Trump making fun of J.D. Vance at J.D. Vance's own rally. Now, first off, he wasn't even invited to that rally, but he showed up anyway and then proceeded to like just make fun of the guy that he is supposed to be there on behalf of. I mean, it was fantastic, but it really does show you how craven some of these people in DC are. What they would do for a little bit of a tasty taste for some of that money and for some of that power, you know? They show up and, you know, immediately they unman themselves. They become betas.
Beta male.
And basically give Donald Trump their banana. And that's what it is. And they suck it up. They suck up to one of the biggest, most insecure man children. But again, it's not just like that, right? It's not just Donald Trump, but at this point, Donald Trump is their daddy. These are the same people that call the left soft, right? These are the same people that are out there saying that America has a masculinity crisis. Masculinity crisis. Now, look, maybe they're partly right, because you can't look at that. You can't read that tweet, read that story, and be like, oh yeah, no masculinity crisis at all. It just happens to be on the right wing. These Trump sycophants are literally the best example. Best example of it. Gross. Okay. Moving on. Let's go to something serious now. Dystopian dragon says cooked by a cuck.
Beta male.
Okay. Had to do it. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is being hit by a lawsuit for his actions in sending migrants to Martha's Vineyard in what has been described as a political stunt. Now, the civil lawsuit was filed in the U.S. District Court of Massachusetts on Tuesday, just 6 days after 48 migrants were flown to the island on behalf of the governor. So now, let me address some of the right-wing framing around this situation that has unfortunately been picked up by even some mainstream outlets. For one, these are not undocumented immigrants. These are asylum seekers. They're not illegal. They're lawful asylum seekers. These are people who, again, followed the law, which says that you can apply for asylum inside the borders of the United States. So, again, no illegal border crossing here if you're seeking asylum. And now there's also the narrative that they went on these planes, they boarded these planes voluntarily. In reality, seems like they were lied to. And I'll show you evidence of that. Some of the Venezuelan migrants flown to Martha's Vineyard were actually given misleading brochures promising up to 8 months of cash assistance, employment services, and housing assistance, their lawyers tell Axios. So now, originally, images of this brochure were obtained by Judd Legum and posted in a story that he had published at Popular Info. I want to show you that right here. So, yeah, look at that. That's the brochure showing all the wonderful services that migrants and asylum seekers are actually not eligible for. Let me show you the other side of that. And you can see, there it is. Brochure says that migrants who arrive in Massachusetts will be eligible for numerous benefits, including, again, 8 months of cash assistance with housing, food, clothing, transportation to job interviews, job training, job placement, registering children for school, assistance for applying Social Security cards, and many other benefits that, again, they're actually not supposed to get. And according to some of the migrants, the benefits described in the brochure were also promised verbally to lure them onto the planes chartered by DeSantis. Quote, They told us that they were going to help us with the rent to get a job. That was the only option left to us, one migrant, Eduardo Linares, told the Texas Tribune. Linares, of course, ultimately declined to board the flight. As you can see, it was a lie. There was no support system. And when they showed up at Martha's Vineyard, it was a complete and utter surprise to everyone there, who then, of course, had to, struggle to set things up to accommodate these migrants. Ultimately, they did set up a support system on short notice in order to handle them, and then ended up sending them to a facility to help them, of course, get legal representation to process their asylum claims. Oren Selstrom, litigation director for Lawyers for Civil Rights, told Axios, and this is about the case, that he doesn't know who made or distributed those brochures, but that his organization is among several that have asked for a criminal investigation. Selstrom added that such an action could potentially lead to charges against Ron DeSantis, who has taken responsibility for transporting migrants and promised a lot more. DeSantis, he says, has publicly taken credit for his conduct, so the criminal liability may extend to the highest level, certainly, although, of course, the law on that is a little bit of a gray area. So I don't necessarily know if he's actually going to be held accountable. But now, again, you have this lawsuit, which is a civil lawsuit, and lists the governor as a defendant along with the Florida Department of Transportation and their leader, Jared Perdue. So here are some of the claims from the plaintiffs in the suit. These immigrants who are pursuing the proper channels for lawful immigration status in the United States experienced cruelty akin to what they fled in their home country. Defendants manipulated them, stripped them of their dignity, deprived them of their liberty, bodily autonomy, due process, and equal protection under the law, and impermissibly interfered with the federal government's exclusive control over immigration in furtherance of an unlawful goal and a person's political agenda. The filing also alleges that DeSantis and other defendants engaged in false imprisonment of each migrant and inflicted emotional distress on them when they became aware that they were transported thousands of miles away from Texas, where they need to continue with their federal immigration proceedings without any of the support from the defendants. Remember, they were promised support so they could go back and have resources to then pursue their cases to stay in the United States legally. Well, when they found out they didn't have any of that, they became emotionally traumatized, and that's completely understandable. Defendants also negligently inflicted emotional distress upon the individual plaintiffs through their actions described throughout this complaint. This negligent infliction of emotional distress caused the plaintiffs dignitary harms and physical manifestations of harm, requiring mental health counseling and support. So now, of course, DeSantis, his communication director, Taryn Fenske, responded to the report from Axios, saying that, quote, immigrants have been more than willing to leave Bexar County after being abandoned, homeless, and left to fend for themselves. Florida gave them an opportunity to seek greener pastures in a sanctuary jurisdiction that offered greater resources for them, as we expected. Fenske added, unless the MA National Guard has abandoned these individuals, they have been provided accommodations, sustenance, clothing, and more options to succeed following their unfair enticement into the United States. Unlike the 53 immigrants who died in a truck found abandoned in Bexar County this June. I love how they pretend to care about dead immigrants. Look, and you know why that happened? It's mainly because, honestly, it's Congress. Congress does not want to fix our broken immigration system. What we need to do is actually have more judges at the border to process asylum cases. There's a lot of people coming over and claiming asylum. And they're sitting there. And they're facing harsh treatment. Terrible conditions. But look, these people did not sneak over the border. Again, they entered the United States legally as asylum seekers. And look, the worst thing about that is, of course, Abbott, that's Texas Governor Greg Abbott, as well as Ron DeSantis, and those officials, they knew that already. They knew that. By the way, they specifically took the Venezuelans from Texas brought them to Florida, and then shipped them to Massachusetts. Now, there was also a mixture of migrants from different areas. Again, many of them believed to have been from Venezuela, and some of them happened to be from Cuba. Do you know who Ron DeSantis did not ship out to Massachusetts? The Cubans. Gee, I wonder why. Could it be that, there's a lot of Cuban immigrants that become, when they become citizens, end up voting for Republicans? Could be. I don't know for sure. But what I do believe is that this is absolutely a political stunt. And if it leads to charges, I absolutely think it should, because it seems like human trafficking to me. But again, my cynicism is showing, and I don't necessarily believe that Ron DeSantis will face any sort of consequences. At most, it'll be a staffer. At best, right? And that's, of course, they do find out that it was DeSantis's government on his orders that made these misleading brochures, and that could be hard to prove. Maybe, this lawsuit could lead to discovery, and that might be interesting, because if we find out who made these and it happened to have been under, the orders of DeSantis or someone who's high up in the DeSantis administration, well, that could branch off into actual criminal charges. Because again, luring people, that's human trafficking, and that is illegal. Now, the other thing, too, is, look, the entire situation is disgusting. Here we have governors using desperate human beings as political pawns, political props. And as I've said before, when it comes to, hatred of immigrants, especially migrants, there's no bottom to that barrel on the Republican side. But also understand that, too, we wouldn't have gotten to this point had immigration not been, had immigration actually been handled and not, punted at any time where, for example, Democrats happen to have been in charge. So, look, we have to get more judges at the border. We have to do something to fix our incredibly slow, broken, and inefficient immigration system, or else stuff like this is going to continue happening. And they're going to, right-wingers are going to continue to use these people, these often incredibly desperate people, fleeing terrible circumstances, as political props and pawns in order to try to win elections based on hatred. Okay. Moving on. Senator Marco Rubio is not very happy about the new lawsuit filed against Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, the civil suit, which was filed in Massachusetts, alleges that DeSantis had misled migrants who are legally here seeking asylum in accordance to U.S. laws, and that they were misled into believing that they would receive support if they had boarded those planes, which, of course, they did not. But here is Marco Rubio complaining about this lawsuit on Fox News.
People came into this country illegally, violating our laws, okay? And the first thing they do is get lawyers and use our laws to sue an elected governor, to sue a state. I mean, just think about that. They just got here. They're not even here legally. They didn't enter the country the proper way, and they're immediately in court demanding rights and claims under our laws. This is outrageous. What other country in the world would that even be allowed? What other country in the world would even tolerate that? So I think this is, this is not immigration, what we're seeing, okay? This is mass migration. That's a very different thing. But to think about the fact that somebody just came here illegally, and within a week they're in court and they have lawyers representing them in court, suing the American government whose laws they just violated, is unbelievable. It's outrageous. It angers me, and it should anger everybody.
No, it should anger you. Get mad. Get mad. I mean, I just told a bunch of lies, about these migrants, about these asylum seekers, but ignore that. Ignore the reality. Just focus on the fact that you should be mad because brown people have come into this country. Now, again, to be fair, Marco Rubio seems to know his audience, because anybody watching that on Fox News, of course, they're going to be angry because they don't care about facts. So now he told us, again, several lies here. Lie number one, they came in the wrong way. They're illegal. They broke U.S. laws. No. They applied for asylum. You have to be on U.S. soil to apply for asylum. Again, they don't care about facts. But secondly, they're not suing the American government. They're suing Ron DeSantis, 3 other officials, and like a Florida department. Why? Because they were lied to and lured onto those planes and that got dumped off as a political stunt. Now, there was, of course, a brochure that was handed out to certain migrants, ones that are believed to have been from Venezuela, that says that those who arrived in Massachusetts would be eligible for some benefits, numerous benefits, which, again, are not available to migrants, which included 8 months of cash assistance with housing, food, clothing, transportation to job interviews, job training, job placement, registering children from school, assistance for applying for Social Security cards, other things. Again, they're not eligible for those things. So that's lie number 2, right? Lie number 3 is a little bit more difficult to spot, but he says it a couple of times. Oh, they have lawyers representing them in court. And they're demanding rights and claims. Can you believe they have lawyers? Can you believe they have lawyers? Now, that's basically insinuating that they shouldn't have, or they're not eligible to have legal representation, which they are. They are, actually. And what they're doing, by the way, is not demanding insane rights and claims that they shouldn't have. No, they're demanding that Ron DeSantis follow the law of the United States, which puts the immigration at the purview of the federal government. And so Ron DeSantis, in doing the stunt, interfered with that by shipping them, across the country, so that very likely they could miss their court appointments to argue their asylum claims. But see, again, getting back to Rubio, he knows his audience. He knows that they're racist. It's not going to matter to them what the truth really is. They don't care. They don't care. And so Rubio lies to them and says, you should be angry. You should be angry. Understand that that's one of the things, anger, that triggers conservatives, right? Well, actually, no. The things that trigger conservatives actually lead to this anger. Those two things that really do trigger conservative brains, and there's been studies on this, is fear. In this case, fear of the other, fear of immigrants, fear of brown people, fear of being replaced. The other is disgust, right? And that's why you hear, of course, Tucker Carlson say things like, oh, you dirty, disgusting immigrants coming over. Can you believe it? And so you combine those things, you get anger. And so that's why you have this knee-jerk reaction to immigrants who are not white. They've been told over and over again, propagandized to, that immigrants hate America. Well, now wait, why would you want to live in a country that you hate? Why would you want to go over to a country that you despise? No, the migrants are actually trying to make a better life for themselves because they've heard about the promise of America, the whole idea of America, and that it's a safer place for them to be. Again, some of these migrants, they left here because gangs had threatened to murder their entire families if their sons were not forced to join that gang. Some were shut down and threatened by their own governments. Others are members of the LGBTQ community that have been discriminated against by their governments. That's why they're requesting asylum. They're not here to steal your job. They're not here to come and replace you, whatever that means. They're not here to take your money. No, none of that even makes any sense. No, they're actually here to come find a better life, to create a better life for themselves. And look, immigration enriches this country. They're often incredibly hard workers and create a lot of new businesses and opportunities. Or yes, American workers as well. But when you try to explain facts, understand that they don't care about facts. All they care about is their unrelenting, burning hatred of anyone that's the other. And unfortunately, that's what tends to drive them. It really is sad. Okay. In what is both a reprehensible yet completely unsurprising act by Amazon, the company has promoted a former executive with an interesting history to oversee warehouse training. So now, according to Matt Stoller, who wrote, last week, Amazon had taken the company's head of loss prevention in the Americas, a woman named Dana Howard, and given her the position of being the head trainer for warehouse workers. Now, as I mentioned, she has a very interesting resume and work history, and so I'm going to get into that. Turns out she was a former executive from the private prison industry. Howard, Stoller writes, started her career at the private prison giant known as Corrections Corporation of America, which has since been renamed CoreCivic. Gee, I wonder why. I wonder why they had to change their name. Oh, right. PR disaster. Turns out Corrections Corporation of America, not very popular because it literally makes money off taking Americans' freedom. That's the whole point of a private prison, to make money off denying Americans freedom, imprisoning them for profit. It's disgusting. All right, now at CCA, according to her LinkedIn page, Howard, quote, revamped the inmate admission process and revised all processing documentation, resulting in a 20% reduction in inmate processing time and a reduced error rate. So, you know, hey, faster processing time. Let's get them in real fast. Fill up these private prisons so we can make more money. And at Amazon, which she's worked there for about a decade now, she came to head their global security group and then their loss prevention team, after which Howard was then promoted to run their learning and development team, which is Amazon's internal training program for all warehouse workers. Gee, I wonder if the fact that her experience in herding prisoners around would be a reason that she was, chosen to run this warehouse worker training program. I wonder what skills kind of overlap there. After all, again, we do know a lot of stories from Amazon workers and how, absolutely horrific some of these working environments are. For example, how, being micromanaged so much on the job to make rate that people have had to urinate in bottles during their shifts. Drivers have had to urinate in bottles during their shifts, injuring themselves to try to make rate, or even dying. Kind of sounds like a labor camp. Maybe even, I don't know, prison-like conditions. In fact, staff at Amazon's warehouses reported grueling shifts, long hours, and poor welfare. So you might think, whoa. You're comparing it to a prison. Come on. I mean, unlike prison, well, people voluntarily work there. They signed up for the job. Well, this is amazing. According to Amazon's own data, as a result of the working conditions, these warehouses had an attrition rate of 123% as of last year. So 123% attrition rate means more people are leaving their jobs, had left that job the last year with an additional 23% on top that had hired it. That's amazing. And of course, you don't have to wonder why. Not only are working conditions like a prison, which at least in this case, you can actually escape, but you have people that have died. According to More Perfect Union, 2 workers had died at the company's Bessemer, Alabama facility within 24 hours of each other. The group said that one of the deceased men had had his request to go home denied by HR, and hours later suffered a fatal stroke while on the job. Now, you can't go home. The group also alleges that a total of 6 people had died at the Bessemer facility in 2021, and that Amazon is covering up those deaths. And of course, you also had the hurricane, which workers were not allowed to go home, and others were not allowed to even have their phones. So they didn't know that there was a hurricane that was incoming. And just recently, by the way, nearly half of all drivers at an Amazon delivery hub in California had gotten sick from heat-related illness during the heat wave that has been going on in California. During that heat wave, drivers had shared pictures of temperature readings taken inside their vans, with many topping 120 degrees Fahrenheit inside. Brad, a driver in Riverside, California, who said who refused to give his last name, said, quote, "It feels like you're in an open air oven all the time." And in late August, according to another report, as temperatures soared, Brad decided he was going to slow down, to cool off, take a break, etc. Well, he tried to, but then received an automated message from Amazon telling them that he had underperformed on his delivery completion rate. You have underperformed, Brad, which is why you need to get back to the mines and start working again. In this 120 degree inside of your van weather. Others have topped even 125 degrees, breaking the thermostats. These are the conditions that these people are expected to work in. No, total slave master. That's what it is. Now look. Here's what Brad said, by the way. Another quote from him. "It's all about performance metrics. They want you to complete 20 to 25 stops an hour, and if you fall behind, you're in trouble," said Brad, who asked not to give his full name. So that's the conditions, right? So now what better person to help train new people than someone who had literally worked at a private prison corporation? One of the most evil, I should say, the evil, most evil industries in this country. And now is working in a slightly less evil corporation, but still evil. Look, understand, this is why unions and labor are so important. Why the labor movement as a whole needs to continue to grow. We have to band together. We have to get together to fight back against these absolute ghouls in corporate America who are continuing to profit off of human suffering, whether or not it's private prisons, which again should be absolutely abolished. There should be no private prisons, period. No private prisons. But also companies like Amazon who treat their workers like absolute garbage in order to make profit for executives. We need to fight back. And again, the only way we do so is if labor gets together and fights. Okay. Last story here. We're going to lighten it up and have some fun. We're going to talk about furries. Donald Trump Jr. appears to be very concerned about furries.
I was up north yesterday doing some events, and a couple of kids showed up to the rallies. I was in Maine, and then I was in Pennsylvania, and kids are coming up and they're telling me these stories about what's going on in their classrooms. So then I bring it back and I ask my own kids about it, and it is going on. The whole this kid came up to me and told me that in his classroom up in New England, they had litter boxes in the classrooms because a couple of kids, I guess they identified as furries. I guess they think they're cats. And we're supposed to believe that this is totally normal and just, that they have litter boxes in classrooms, not because there's actual cats in the room, but because there's kids going around licking themselves as though they're cats. And, this is normal. So if a kid says something like, maybe that's a little bit odd, the kid that says that, he's the one that gets in trouble, not we're encouraging mental illness at this point. Rather than dealing with it. Ask them.
Okay. Oh yeah, there's a couple of kids that just showed up at a rally. Yeah, they told us about the litter boxes. Oh, really? Oh. Are you sure about that?
Really?
You sure? Because I call bullshit.
Bullshit.
All right. Number one, first of all, okay, I don't think a lot of kids are going to Trump rallies, but okay. Sure. I'm sure some get dragged along by their parents, and I'm sure eventually they will emancipate themselves from their parents for it. But okay, sure. And look, if somehow kids did come up to Don Jr., which again, very, very unlikely, and managed to even talk to him, the chances are real good that those kids are probably trolling you. You know why? It's because this is not happening in schools, okay? There's approximately zero evidence of children getting, litter boxes put into their classrooms because they identify as furries. In fact, look, the reality here is actually a lot more sad. There are some schools that have taken buckets, put them and filled them with kitty litter. Now, what's that all about? Well, it turns out those are for when the school has to go on lockdown for mass shooters. So, and by the way, it can be used for bodily functions or blood to soak it up and to clean up after a mass shooting event. So that's incredibly devastating to learn that, so that is the case where you have a bucket, not a litter box, but a bucket with some cat litter in it. Okay. And of course, there's other bodily fluids that get cleaned up with that. For example, it throws up at lunch. Okay. But they're not using it to go to the bathroom in under normal circumstances. Again, only in a school lockdown where there's an active shooter. But look, I understand that I can't believe I have to sit here and address this. This is nonsense. But this rumor, this ridiculousness will not die. It is the rumor that won't die. And by the way, Don Jr. is right about one thing. Yes, we have certainly encouraged mental illness in this country by allowing people who act completely insane to say insane things, and yet we have to, talk about it seriously. We've got to take it seriously for some reason. No, this is insane. This is insanity. It's stupid. And by the way, again, people are taking this seriously. Here's an example. In Nebraska, a state senator, Bruce Bostelman, had repeated this false claim during a public televised debate on a bill intended to help school children with behavioral problems. Here's what he said.
It's called something called furries. If you don't know what furries are, it's where school children dress up as animals, cats or dogs, during the school day. They meow and they bark, and they interact with their school, with the teachers and that in this fashion. And now schools are wanting to put litter boxes in the schools for these children to use. I even heard from one person here recently said that a student identified as a cat and wanted a litter box, and the school didn't provide the litter box, so the student went ahead and defecated on the floor. Really? Really? If some kids can't wear American flag to walk through the school on their shirt, and you keep them out of school, and you kick them out of school, but it's okay if they wear a cat costume, and that's fine, and you have a litter box for them, and that's fine?
Really? Really? No, not really. Literally made up. Look, just hours after his remarks, to be fair, to give him credit, okay, Bostelman was like, oh, yeah, no, turns out I was wrong. He backtracked and acknowledged the story was not true. He said he checked into the claims with State Senator Lynn Walls, a Democrat who leads the legislature's Education Committee, and confirmed that there were no such incidents. Here's his quote on that. It was just something I felt that if this is really happening, we needed to address it and address it quickly. But why would you think that it was happening? I don't understand. I don't understand. All right, another Republican official, by the way, in a different state, Councilwoman Mary Brimer, said that she had heard the same thing from parents, and allegedly from children. Now, again, this is a lot of hearsay, right? Brimer had cited parents of multiple schools in the district as sources for these allegations. Quote, they tell me that one has been hissing at other students, and they say there's a litter box. I said, I need a picture. Yeah, by all means, give us a picture. No, there was no picture because it didn't happen. And look, they had to come out and say, and this is Interim Superintendent Michael Waterman explained in a statement to ABC6 News that the rumors were, quote, unequivocally false. Honestly, it's shameful that someone would start a rumor to disparage the students and staff at the North Kingston School Department. Jennifer Lima, the school committee member of North Kingston, said, quote, the NKSD is not providing litter boxes in the bathrooms. As to the reports that there are students in the district who identify as cats, I cannot and will not comment on that. We have almost 4,000 students in our district. How they choose to identify is a personal decision and is not for me or anyone else to disclose. Well, there you go. Oh, and the last part of that statement, whether they identify as a he, a she, a they, or anything else, all students are part of the NK community and deserve to be treated with respect. That's actually based. I actually do love that because it's like, who cares how they identify? They all deserve respect. All right. I love it. But look, honestly, to get back to what this actually is really about, there's no litter boxes in the bathrooms or in the classrooms. No kids that are on a consistent basis dressing up as cats. Okay, that's not happening unless it's Halloween. Then of course it happens and it's good. It's totally fine, right? But no, what this is about is attacking public education. Okay, they're making up these insane conspiracy theories and talking about things that has just never happened. And it's amazing how so many people, older people who should know better, are falling for this stuff and saying, oh yeah, no, I heard it was true from this person and this person and this person. They said it was true. So obviously I 100% believe them, even though I haven't seen any evidence at all. And now, of course, the newest person to get on this and show how much more mainstream this nonsense conspiracy, this allegation has become, now you have Don Jr. repeating it. So here we go again. This is the one conspiracy. Well, I guess added to the list of conspiracies in the right wing that just will not die. So expect to hear more of this ridiculousness going forward. All right. Oh, damn. Okay. That's all I got for the stories today. Let's see. Super chat here from Vincent Von Dahl says, a cool name, by the way. I like that. Von Dahl. Oh, yeah. That's a manly name. Breaking news, Amazon and CoreCivic announced merger. We already were prison slave labor anyway, so it just felt natural, spokesperson says. That's a great comment. I love it. Fantastic comment and fantastic name. Love it. All right, so let's see. Go over to Twitch here. Badass Wampa, thank you for subbing with Prime. Appreciate that. All right. So look, that's the show, everybody. Let's go to Twitch and do a raid here. Let's raid the left flank vets that are on today. For everyone else, thank you. Groove Dragon also mentions that this is a roundabout way to attack trans children, and I also agree with that as well. And you know, the whole bathroom bills. All right. So anyway, like I said, have a great evening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Thank you for the super chats. Please like and share and subscribe. All that wonderful stuff. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation.
Oh no!
There's insanity in the control room.
I will eat your ass.
There's some whores in this town.
Get in
Sexual
anarchy.
with a fucking beam.
No.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels